corporations get an excessive amount of debt, it's never paid for. So yeah, we can transfer around. We're dealing only with finding victims. We cannot get rid of the debt, whether it's our national debt or whether it's corporate debt, but we have to put it on somebody else. We need to look at the cause of these bubbles, and it has to do with monetary policy and the Federal Reserve System.
That was Ron Paul on the House floor. Also, as many of you know, we have had a toy drive for the Feel Good Foundation. They were shipped off this week. Go ahead, Brian, bring us up to speed on how many we had, when they shipped, and what else you might want to add to that.
Yes, we shipped 10 boxes of toys this previous Monday, and I spoke to Charlie Giles last night, and he informed me that they had in fact received those Thursday. They're extraordinarily happy. Of all our efforts here, the Real News Radio and We Are Change North Carolina, they still said they need many more. They have over 400 kids coming to this Christmas party, and we're planning on sending at least one more box, because I believe, Farron, you said you received a few toys. Was it Thursday? Or?
Yeah, Mitch brought by some toys, and so we're going to have one more box to ship. Do you want to give it a few days, see if anything else comes in before you ship them? I know time is of the essence.
Well, as I was talking to Charlie last night, I mean, you could sense the desperation in his voice. He said, he would send someone down here to pick him up, just anything. He's just that desperate at this point.
Well, we'll maybe give it a few days, see if anybody else contacts us, and we're going to go to a break. We're going to come back with a little bit more news, and then we will go to our phones. Our phone number is 704-873-1400. Our Davie County number is 336-499-0681. And as we've stated here before, the main focus of this broadcast is a forum for you, the listener, to have your say on the desperate situations that we find our government in, these bailouts. It's appalling to me to see our government so rapidly and blatantly move from capitalism to socialism. I mean, the descent that we have seen, I'm sure you would agree, Brian, just in the last few months, it's happening way faster than any of us believed. And we are moving into a socialistic country that would make Russia and Nazi Germany smile with contentment to see how far we've come. It's just unreal.
Absolutely. It's just a precipitous decline, and I mean, anything is possible at this point.
Well, you're here on the Real News, WSIC 1400, WDSL 1520, and we will be back and take your phone calls shortly. We'll go ahead and do the clip. Go ahead and do the clip. You can lead us into it. Then we'll do the Bloomberg.
Hello and welcome back to the Real News. We're going to play a small clip here from Peter Schiff. He was on the Real News, unaffiliated with the Real News Radio, and he talks about the financial situation, bailouts, hyperinflation. Peter Schiff is president of Euro-Pacific Capital. He's an economist. He's been highly outspoken for actually many years on the direction our economy is going, possibility of hyperinflation, the Federal Reserve, and now that everything's happening, of course, he's finally getting the credibility that he deserves.
And a lot of Americans, they talk about the $750 billion, but as Ron Paul stated there, it's more like $8 trillion, and Peter Schiff is going to shine some light on the fact that it's actually much more than that. I mean, these numbers are unfathomable, and your mainstream puppet press keeps your mind focused on the $750 billion, but that's really just a drop in the bucket. So we're going to go here with Peter Schiff.
Inflation ultimately results when the demand for money collapses, where confidence is lost in money, and people won't hold it. Because paper money intrinsically is worthless, and the confidence can go away. When the confidence goes away, the buying power goes away. History is replete with examples of hyperinflation. It is not uncommon. It is something that generally happens with a paper currency. When the money is just a piece of paper, it's very easy for the public to lose confidence, especially when the government is printing too much of it, which is what's happening in our economy. The government is trying to create additional consumer spending, and they're trying to do it by printing money. Given what the government is doing, we're facing depression, an inflationary depression. If the government was not making the problem worse, then we would be facing something far less drastic. But even if the government did all the right things, which is basically allowing the market to work, the resolution of years of reckless spending would not come without pain. What's happening today is not the problem. What we are living through are the consequences of the problem. The problem was that we blew all our money, that we borrowed and spent ourselves into bankruptcy. We allowed this phony economy, this service sector economy, to replace the industrial economy we once had, but it's not viable. It was only viable temporarily because we were able to borrow money from the rest of the world to make it work.
As of November 19th, the total U.S. federal debt was $10.6 trillion, adding unfunded Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans' pensions, and similar obligations. This figure rises to over $53 trillion of debt, or roughly $500,000 per American household.
I think most Americans think the government has money and they can just spend it. The government has no money. The government has to take money from somebody else in order to give it to somebody. People think if they just print the money, if they don't raise taxes, that it's a freebie. But it's not a freebie. We have to pay the cost of government programs, and if they pay for them or finance them with inflation, it debases the value of our savings, it debases the value of our wages, and prices rise across the board. The economy is going to continue to weaken. The government is going to continue these foolhardy policies meant to interfere with the market's correction of the imbalances. They're going to try to encourage even more reckless consumption, that we go even deeper into debt. And so if we are basically in trouble because we've borrowed and spent too much money, we are going to be in much more trouble every time the government stimulates the economy. Because the only thing that the stimulus does is increases our debt. The dollar either has no future at all, meaning it'll just become worthless, or it's going to have a very rocky road. I mean, that it's going to lose a lot of value. If it's going to be maintained in its present form as the currency of this country, there's going to have to be some radical and very painful changes in the way we run monetary policy.
Over $50 trillion, if you add it all up, that's just amazing. Something that you do not hear in the mainstream press. The only one that I can really say, or maybe two in the press that has been addressing this with some semblance of truth, is Lou Dobbs and Glenn Beck. What do you make of that, Brian? Is that not just an unreal amount of money that we are into here? I mean, how can this be fixed? Is it fixable?
I personally don't think it's fixable. I think, a catastrophic type of failure has to occur. We have to start from just absolute ashes over again, just like a forest fire. But I mean, as you were saying, I mean, we also had David Walker here on the program in March, one of our very first guests actually, and a former Comptroller General of the United States, and he resigned in frustrations as to our country's condition. We just keep spending ourselves right into a black hole.
And he predicted the very collapse that we saw 6 months before it happened.
Absolutely.
But yet our government officials, president, people running for president, were saying our economy was sound. I mean, it's just unbelievable the lack of truth in our media.
The very same people now that have all the solutions to get out of the problem 6 months ago said there wasn't a problem.
Yeah, problem, reaction, solution, and they've gave all these untold billions, and we're fixing to get into the transparency and the lack of accountability to the bankers, and they're holding it. And like we said, the governor of Illinois dared to go up against them, and look at him now. But many people may not be aware of this. 5 weeks ago, Bloomberg, I'm sure you're familiar with them, the Federal Reserve is facing a lawsuit after it failed to comply with the congressional demands for transparency and disclose the destination of at least $2 trillion in bailout funds, underscoring once again the failure of the top-down socialism and the folly of the trusting the foxes to guard the henhouse. The Federal Reserve is refusing to identify the recipients of almost $2 trillion of the emergency loans from American taxpayers, or the troubled assets the central bank is accepting as collateral. And this is being reported by Bloomberg. Federal Chairman Ben Bernanke and the Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson said in September they would comply with congressional demands for transparency in a $700 billion bailout of the banking system. 2 months later, as the Fed lends far more than that in separate rescue programs that didn't require approval by Congress, Americans have no idea where their money is going or what securities the bank are pledging in return.